The grand hall of the Celestian Empire shimmered with a soft blue glow that rose from the crystalline floor to the arched ceilings, where faint energy streams pulsed in slow waves. The Empire prided itself on elegance above all else. Every guest invited to such a hall came prepared to be impressed. Yet on this day, every alien pair of eyes inside turned toward the entrance when the doors hissed open and revealed a lone human warrior who walked in with calm resolve. Was known among his people as Rien. He carried no weapon. Yet the way he stood implied that he needed none. His posture was steady, his steps measured, his eyes scanning the hall with a quiet assurance that spoke of battles survived and hopes carried forward through difficulty. Humans were recent additions to the vast interstellar community. Their appearance at such a formal ceremony remained a moment of curiosity for most and suspicion for some. Only the Celestian royal family understood the significance of his arrival. At the far end of the hall stood Princess Lyra, daughter of the Celestian Emperor, commander of 3 fleets, and the youngest strategist to ever hold rank in the Empire. Her silver eyes glinted with a light that matched the hall's glow, though in that moment the brightness came not from the crystals, but from something far more surprising. It began the instant she saw Rien enter. The crowd whispered among themselves, but the princess seemed to hear none of it. She stared at the human warrior as if every story she had heard about humans, every warning, every tale of their strange bravery and relentless endurance had suddenly taken shape before her. She had read many accounts of them, stories that painted them as unpredictable, stubborn, resilient in ways that bordered on impossible. Her father often spoke of humans with a tone that mixed admiration with caution. He spoke of how they fought to defend what mattered to them, how they rose when defeated, how they overcame impossible barriers, through little more than determination and heart. None of those stories prepared her for the sight of Rien walking through the hall with the self-assurance of someone who knew the importance of his presence, but refused to let it overwhelm him. He bowed when he approached the imperial dais. The Celestian Emperor greeted him with a formal gesture and addressed the hall with a deep voice resonated through the crystalline structure. He welcomed the human representative and acknowledged the alliance negotiations between the Celestian Empire and the Union of Sol. Rien stood before the Emperor with respect, but his eyes lifted only once toward the throne before shifting. They met the gaze of the Princess. Lyra felt an unexpected warmth surge through her chest. Something about his eyes held a quiet strength that carried more weight than any title. She had been trained since childhood to master her emotions, to control her reactions, to hide her thoughts behind a dignified calm. Yet in that moment she felt something shift inside her, something she had no practice containing. Rien looked away with polite respect, unaware of the effect his presence had on her. The ceremony continued with formal declarations and diplomatic speeches. The hall resonated with layered tones that echoed in rhythmic harmony whenever an official spoke. Though Lyra listened with outward calm, her thoughts drifted toward the warrior who now stood among the honored guests. When the ceremony ended, the Emperor announced a gathering in the adjoining chamber. As the crowd moved, Lyra remained still for a brief moment. Her mind replayed the sight of Rien entering the hall. She felt a pull toward him. It was not the impulsive fascination of a sheltered noblewoman. She was a commander, tempered by battles and negotiations. She recognized instinct when it spoke. Something about that human felt important, not only for the alliance, but for something deeper. She approached him once the hall emptied, enough for a private conversation. He noticed her and bowed with respectful formality. She spoke with a gentle tone that surprised even herself. She asked him whether the ceremony had been overwhelming. He replied that humans were adaptable and that he had experienced far harsher environments than a glowing hall filled with curious dignitaries. His voice held a certain warmth beneath its steadiness. It reminded her of tales she had heard of human warriors who joked in the face of danger as if familiar with adversity. She walked beside him as they entered the gathering chamber, where refreshments from various worlds shimmered on floating trays. She asked him how he saw the coming alliance. He answered with honesty. He believed humans would bring resilience and innovation. He believed the Celestians offered astonishing knowledge and refined diplomacy. In his view, they complemented each other. She found herself listening intently to every word. There was no arrogance in his tone, no attempt to hide uncertainty behind bravado. Instead, he spoke with clarity of purpose, a trait she found rare among representatives who often drowned meaning in elaborate speeches. When he mentioned how he had trained for the mission and how deeply he valued its success, she felt admiration building within her. He was not a soldier seeking glory. He was a warrior seeking understanding and unity. That alone marked him as different. As the gathering continued, dignitaries approached Rian with polite curiosity. He answered their questions with patience. He moved through the crowd with quiet grace, offering small gestures of respect to each species he encountered. Lyra watched him from a distance. She noticed how some alien guests regarded him with concealed skepticism. Humans were still too new. But Rian responded with humility and sincerity, slowly easing their doubts. Later, when the crowd thinned, Lyra found herself standing beside him once more. She asked him whether the Empire seemed strange to him. He replied that every world felt strange at first, but that he believed strangeness was simply the beginning of discovery. The simplicity of his answer struck her. She had spent years navigating politics, balancing alliances, countering threats, and analyzing possibilities. Yet here stood a human who approached the universe as something to learn from rather than something to conquer or fear. They spoke for a long while about their cultures. She told him of the Celestian practice of attuning children to the harmonic fields of their worlds, teaching them to sense emotional resonance within energy flows. He listened with genuine interest. She asked about human training. He described how humans tested their limits by pushing themselves through hardship, trusting their instincts and leaning on their unpredictable creativity. They discovered differences, yet each difference revealed something complementary. As they talked, Lyra felt a connection blossoming between them. She had not expected such a bond to form so quickly. Yet something inside her knew that bonds were not measured by time, but by resonance. His presence resonated with something deep within her. As the gathering reached its end, the Emperor called the princess to discuss matters of protocol. She excused herself and stepped aside, but even as she spoke with her father, her thoughts drifted toward Rian. She sensed something in her father's tone. The Emperor had noticed the way she looked at the human. He did not speak of it, but she knew he missed nothing. Later that night she walked through the palace gardens, their floating crystalline blossoms illuminating the paths with soft blue light. She sensed someone approaching behind her. When she turned, she found Rian standing near the entrance, looking uncertain, as though he felt he might be interrupting her solitude. She invited him to walk with her. He accepted. They moved slowly beneath the floating blossoms. She asked him why he had stepped outside instead of retiring to the guest quarters. He said he could not sleep. The Empire felt serene compared to the noise of human stations. The quiet stirred thoughts that he had not yet learned how to organize. She smiled, sensing the honesty behind his words. She told him that even Celestians sometimes found the gardens overwhelming because they mirrored emotional fields. Rian paused and asked her whether the gardens influenced her. She admitted that they did. When she had seen him enter the hall earlier, she had felt a resonance, so strong that the gardens now seemed to echo it. Rian looked surprised. She realized her honesty had startled him. She quickly clarified that Celestians often sensed intuitive connections with individuals whose presence aligned with their own energy field. He stood silently as he tried to understand. She explained further. She told him that when he entered the hall, she sensed courage tempered by patience. She sensed hope carried through struggle. She sensed a heart that refused to break even when burdened. His expression changed. He seemed deeply moved, and also uncertain of how to respond. He finally admitted that he had felt something too. He did not understand Celestian resonance, but he had felt calm when he saw her, though he could not explain it. It was not fear or pressure. It felt like stepping into a place that recognized him, a place that welcomed him without asking him to prove anything. Her breath caught for a moment. She realized he had felt the same connection in his own human way. They walked deeper into the gardens. She asked him about his life before becoming a representative. He told her about training under harsh conditions, about his desire to serve not for power, but for unity. She shared memories of her own training, of commanding fleets at a young age, of making decisions that shaped the Empire's future. Their conversations grew more honest with each step. They talked about their fears. They talked about their hopes. They talked about the worlds they wanted to protect and the futures they wanted to shape. Lyra found herself speaking of dreams she had never voiced to anyone outside her family. Rian listened with steady attention. He spoke with clarity that grounded her as they continued walking. The blossoms above them shifted color from blue to soft violet, signaling the approach of night. She felt a slight ache inside her as she realized the evening would soon end. She did not want it to end. Rian slowed his pace. He seemed to sense the same unspoken thought. He told her that he had not expected to find understanding so far from home. She replied that she had not expected to find someone whose presence made the gardens resonate so strongly. For a moment, they stood facing each other beneath a cluster of blossoms that hovered like stars. Suspended in gentle motion, Lyra felt her heart stirring. She had met many warriors, many dignitaries, many leaders. None carried the mixture of resilience, sincerity, and curiosity that Rian carried so naturally. She realized she had fallen for him from the moment he entered the hall. It made no logical sense, yet it felt truer than anything she had felt in years. Rian seemed to understand without needing to hear the words. He stepped closer, not with boldness, but with respect. He told her that he felt honored to stand with her in that moment. She told him that the honor was mutual. They held each other's gaze in silence that spoke more than words could, and that quiet the blossoms above them brightened, reacting to the depth of their connection. The gardens had always responded to emotional resonance, and in that moment they echoed the harmony forming between them. She knew their worlds were different. She knew their responsibilities would challenge any personal bond. Yet she also knew that some connections were worth fighting for. Humans valued struggle. Celestians valued harmony. Together these values created balance. As they returned to the palace entrance, Rian paused. He told her that whatever came next, he would stand with honesty and loyalty. She told him that she believed him more than she had believed anyone outside her family. They parted for the night, but neither of them felt the distance. The bond between them was already stronger than the space that separated them. In the days that followed, they spent every moment they could together, learning from each other, supporting each other through diplomatic challenges, discovering how easily their strengths aligned. The Celestian Empire and the Union of Soul continued to negotiate, but the bond between the princess and the human warrior became a quiet guiding force behind every decision. The grand hall where they first met continued to shimmer with its soft blue glow, but whenever Lyra looked at it, she no longer saw only refined elegance. She saw the moment her life shifted, the moment she realized that some connections were written not by destiny, but by the courage to recognize another heart across an ocean of stars. And for Rian, the memory of that moment stayed with him always. He had entered the hall prepared to serve his people and represent humanity with dignity. He had not expected to find someone who saw him more clearly than anyone had before. He had not expected to find a princess whose heart resonated with his own. Yet he did. Together, they forged a path that neither of their worlds had predicted. Their story spread quietly among diplomats and warriors. It echoed through soldiers' barracks and across alien academies. It became a symbol of what humans were capable of at their best. Not conquest, not fear, but connection. For that was the true strength of humanity. The ability to reach across difference, to stand with sincerity, to love with unbroken resolve. And for Princess Lyra, that strength was what drew her to the human warrior the moment he entered the grand hall. It was what kept her by his side as they shaped a new future. It was what made their bond unshakable across every star that watched their story unfold.